The Great Hall of Vareth Prime was the largest structure ever built by any species in the known galaxy. Its crystal dome stretched 3 miles across and floated in the empty space between stars. Inside this dome, representatives from 47 different alien civilizations had gathered to discuss the fate of a small blue planet called Earth. Ambassador Kelrix of the Zorath Dominion walked to the center of the chamber. He was tall and covered in gray scales that clicked together when he moved. His yellow eyes scanned the assembly with cold satisfaction. He had waited a long time for this moment. "Fellow members of the Galactic Assembly," he began, his voice echoing through the vast space. 30 years ago, our scout ships discovered a primitive species on the third planet of an unremarkable yellow star. We have watched them since then. We have studied their behavior, their technology, and their resources. Today, I asked this assembly to vote on their classification. The chamber fell silent. Every alien in attendance knew what Kelrix was about to propose. "The species calls themselves humans," Kelrix continued. "They have no faster-than-light travel. They have no energy shields. They have no understanding of galactic civilization. Their planet, however, is rich in water, minerals, and organic compounds. Their bodies are strong and durable. Their population exceeds 8 billion, and they breed quickly." He paused and let his words sink in. "I propose we classify humanity as a resource species under Galactic Code 7 Alpha." Murmurs spread through the assembly. Resource species was the polite term for slaves. It meant that humanity would become property of the Galactic Assembly. Their planet would be stripped of resources. Their people would be shipped to mining colonies and factory worlds across the galaxy. They would work until they died, and their children would be born into the same fate. High Counselor Ven of the Solari Collective rose from her seat. Her skin glowed with soft blue light, and her voice carried the weight of centuries. "Ambassador Kelrix, this is a serious proposal. Have we considered the ethical implications?" "Ethics are a luxury for species that have earned them," Kelrix replied. "Humans fight wars against each other constantly. They pollute their own atmosphere. They cannot even agree on basic governance. They are not civilized, and they never will be. We would be doing them a favor by giving their lives purpose." Another voice spoke up. Ambassador Torin of the Polani Federation was small and covered in soft brown fur. His species were traders and had always been uncomfortable with the slave system. "Perhaps we should make contact first. Perhaps they could be integrated into galactic society peacefully." Kelrix laughed, and the sound was harsh and cold. "Integrated? Look at them, Torin. They are barely more advanced than animals. Integration would take centuries, and we would gain nothing from it. The vote is simple. We claim them now, while they are weak, or we wait until they become a threat." The debate continued for 6 hours. Representatives argued back and forth, but Kelrix had prepared well. He had made deals with the major powers. He had promised them access to Earth's resources and a share of the human labor force. One by one, the voices of opposition fell silent. When the vote was finally called, 39 civilizations voted in favor of enslaving humanity. 6 abstained. Only 2 voted against, and their objections were recorded and ignored. "The motion carries," High Counselor Ven announced, her voice heavy with something that might have been regret. "Humanity is hereby classified as resource species 7 Alpha 2771. The Zorath Dominion will lead the acquisition fleet. May the stars guide us." Kelrix smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "The fleet will depart tomorrow. We estimate full planetary control within 3 rotations. 12,000 light-years away, in a bunker buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains." Colonel Daniel Hayes stared at a screen filled with alien symbols. Beside him stood Dr. Lisa Morgan, a woman of 42 with tired eyes and trembling hands. She had spent the last 2 years learning to decode alien communications and what she had just translated made her want to vomit. "They voted to enslave us," she said quietly. "The whole planet. Everyone." Hayes was a soldier. He had served in 3 wars and had seen terrible things. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. He turned to his communications officer, a young man named Kevin Porter. "Get me the president. Get me every world leader you can reach. Secure channels only." "Sir, what do I tell them?" Hayes looked back at the screen where the alien symbols still glowed. "Tell them the world is about to change. Tell them we have enemies coming, and they are not from this planet. Tell them we have maybe 2 weeks before an alien fleet arrives to turn every man, woman, and child on Earth into property." The next 72 hours were chaos. World leaders who had been enemies for decades suddenly found themselves on the same side. Nuclear arsenals that had been pointed at each other were redirected toward the stars. Scientists who had been working on separate projects were brought together and told to share everything they knew. Dr. Morgan worked without sleep, decoding more of the alien transmissions. She learned about the Zorath fleet, about their weapons and their shields and their absolute confidence that humanity would fall without a fight. She learned about the other species in the galaxy, some of whom had voted against the enslavement and might be potential allies. She learned that the aliens had been watching Earth for 30 years and thought they knew everything about humanity. But they did not know about the bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains. They did not know about the secret space program that had been operating for 2 decades. They did not know about the weapons humanity had been developing, not to fight each other, but to defend against exactly this kind of threat. Colonel Hayes stood before a room full of generals and scientists and politicians. Behind him, a screen showed the approaching alien fleet, still 12 days away. "They think we are primitive," he said. "They think we are weak. They think we will surrender and accept our fate as slaves. They are wrong." He pressed a button, and the screen changed to show a network of satellites and orbital platforms, hidden among the debris of the asteroid belt. "For 20 years, we have been preparing for this day. We did not know who our enemy would be, but we knew they were out there. Now they have shown themselves. Now they have told us exactly what they plan to do. And now we are going to teach them something they never learned in their 8,000 years of galactic civilization." He looked at each person in the room. Humanity does not surrender. Humanity does not submit. And humanity will never be anyone's slaves. The preparations began immediately. For the first time in human history, every nation on Earth worked toward a single goal. Differences were set aside. Resources were shared. The clock was ticking, and the Zorath fleet grew closer with every passing hour. They had voted to enslave Earth. They expected easy victory. They had no idea what was coming. The Zorath fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. 112 warships, each one massive and bristling with weapons, formed a perfect formation against the blackness of space. Fleet Commander Thrax stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked at the distant blue dot that was Earth. "Status report," he ordered. His tactical officer, a younger Zorath named Viren, studied the sensor readings with growing confusion. "Commander, something is wrong. The humans have moved their nuclear weapons." Thrax turned sharply. "Move them where?" "Into orbit, Commander. They have deployed thousands of devices around their planet. They have also positioned large objects in the asteroid belt between the 4th and 5th planets." "Large objects? What kind of large objects?" Viren checked the readings again. "Asteroids, Commander. They appear to have redirected several hundred asteroids and positioned them along our approach vector." Thrax felt something cold settle in his stomach. This was not supposed to happen. The humans were primitives. They should have been panicking, fighting among themselves, praying to their various gods for salvation. They should not have been preparing defenses. They knew we were coming, he said quietly. That is impossible, Commander. Our communications are encrypted with technology they cannot possibly understand. But Thrax knew better. Somehow, the humans had cracked their encryption. Somehow, they had learned about the vote and the fleet. And somehow, in just 2 weeks, they had transformed their entire solar system into a fortress. Continue approach, Thrax ordered. Their nuclear weapons cannot penetrate our shields. Their asteroids are just rocks. We will crush them and proceed with the acquisition as planned. The fleet moved forward, and Earth grew larger in the view screens. In the bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, Colonel Hayes watched the alien ships on his tactical display. Dr. Morgan stood beside him, her face pale but determined. Around them, dozens of officers coordinated the defense of their entire species. They are in range, said Kevin Porter from his station. Hayes nodded. Fire Phase 1. The nuclear weapons in orbit did not fire at the Zorth fleet. Instead, they fired at the asteroids that had been carefully positioned along the approach route. The explosions were massive, and they did exactly what the scientists had predicted. The asteroids shattered into millions of smaller pieces, and the force of the nuclear blasts accelerated those pieces toward the incoming fleet at tremendous speed. Commander Thrax watched in horror as the cloud of debris approached. All ships, evasive action. But there was no evading a wall of rock traveling at a significant fraction of light speed. The shields absorbed what they could, but they were designed for energy weapons, not for millions of high-velocity impacts. 18 ships were torn apart in the first wave. 12 more suffered critical damage and fell out of formation. What is happening? Thrax demanded. They used their nuclear weapons as propulsion, Murren reported, his voice shaking. They fragmented the asteroids and accelerated the fragments toward us. Commander, this tactic is not in any of our databases. No species has ever done this before. Thrax gripped the arms of his command chair. Regroup the fleet. Continue toward Earth. We still have 82 operational vessels. That is more than enough to take one planet. The fleet reformed and pushed forward, but something else was wrong. On ship after ship, systems began to fail. Navigation went offline. Weapons locked up. Communication systems started broadcasting garbled nonsense. We have a virus in our network, Viarn reported. It came hidden in the electromagnetic signature of the nuclear detonations. We did not detect it until it was already spreading. Purge it. We are trying, Commander. But it is adaptive. It is learning our systems faster than we can counter it. On the bridge of the flagship, Thrax watched as 2 of his own ships opened fire on each other, their targeting systems corrupted by the human virus. He watched as a cruiser's engines overloaded and exploded, killing 3,000 Zorth warriors. He watched as the mighty fleet that was supposed to conquer Earth tore itself apart. Commander, we are receiving a transmission, Viren said. It is from the humans, on screen. The face that appeared was unlike any Thrax had seen in the intelligence reports. It was a female human with brown hair and tired eyes. Dr. Lisa Morgan spoke calmly, and her words were translated by the same equipment that had decoded the alien language. Zorth Fleet, this is Earth Command. Your attack has failed. Your ships are compromised, and your fleet is crippled. We offer you one opportunity to withdraw. Leave our solar system, and we will not pursue. Remain, and we will destroy every ship you have. You have 1 hour to decide. The transmission ended. Thrax sat in silence for a long moment. Around him, his officers waited for orders. The flagship was one of the few vessels that had not been infected by the virus, but even it had suffered damage from the asteroid barrage. How many ships do we have remaining? He asked. 43 combat-capable vessels, Commander. Another 20 are damaged but mobile. Mobile? The rest are disabled or destroyed. 43 ships out of 112. More than half his fleet, gone in less than 12 hours. And they had not even reached Earth yet. "Commander," Varen said quietly, "the Galactic Assembly is hailing us. They have been watching the battle through our sensor feeds." The message from Vareth Prime was simple and devastating. High Counselor Ven's glowing face appeared on the screen, and her voice was cold. "Commander Thrax, you are ordered to withdraw immediately. The acquisition of Earth is suspended pending further review. Return to Zara space and await instructions." Thrax wanted to argue. He wanted to press forward and prove that the Zorath could not be defeated by primitives. But he looked at the tactical display, at the wreckage of his fleet scattered across the solar system, and he knew the truth. The humans had won. "All ships," he said, his voice hollow, "prepare for hyperspace jump. We are withdrawing." In the bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, cheers erupted as the alien fleet began to retreat. Colonel Hayes allowed himself a small smile, but he knew this was not the end. They had bought time, nothing more. The aliens would be back, and next time they would not underestimate humanity. Dr. Morgan was already working on the next phase. They had captured fragments of Zorath technology from the destroyed ships. They had learned things from the virus that had infiltrated the alien network. And they had proven something that the entire galaxy would soon understand. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was not primitive. And humanity would never be enslaved. The battle was over, but the war had just begun. 1 year had passed since the Battle of Sol, and the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. In secret facilities hidden across Earth and its moon, humanity had been building. They had taken the wreckage of the Zorath ships and learned from it. They had improved upon the alien technology and combined it with human ingenuity. And now they were ready. Admiral Christine Blake stood on the bridge of the carrier Defiance and looked out at the stars. She was 54 years old, with silver hair and sharp blue eyes that had seen too much war. The ship beneath her feet was the first true human starship, built from scratch in just 11 months. It was not pretty by galactic standards. It was all hard angles and thick armor plating, bristling with weapons that the aliens had never seen before. But it worked, and that was all that mattered. "Admiral, we are approaching the Zorath mining colony on Kareth 7, her tactical officer reported. His name was Samuel Green, a young man who had enlisted the day after the alien fleet retreated. "What are we looking at, Sam?" "Orbital defenses are minimal. Ground forces consist of approximately 200 Zorath guards. The colony itself holds about 15,000 slaves from 12 different species." Blake nodded slowly. The mining colonies were where the Galactic Assembly sent the species they had conquered. Men, women, and children were worked to death extracting minerals and rare elements. When they died, they were replaced by new slaves. The system had operated for 8,000 years, and no one had ever challenged it. Until now. "Open a channel to the colony administrator," Blake ordered. The face that appeared on the view screen was Zorath, gray-scaled and yellow-eyed. Just like Commander Thrax, who had led the failed invasion of Earth, the administrator's name was Morik, and his expression shifted from confusion to fear as he recognized the design of the human ship. "This is Admiral Christine Blake of the Human Coalition, Navy. You are operating an illegal slave facility in violation of basic rights that apply to all sentient beings. You will release your prisoners immediately and surrender to my forces. If you refuse, I will destroy your orbital defenses and take the colony by force. You have 10 minutes to decide." Morik's scales clicked together nervously. "You have no authority here. This colony operates under Galactic Assembly law. If you attack us, you will face the combined might of 47 civilizations." Blake leaned forward in her chair, Your combined might came to my solar system 1 year ago. 69 of those ships are still floating as debris around Jupiter. The rest ran away. I am not afraid of your authority, Administrator. I am giving you a chance to survive. Use it wisely. The transmission ended. 9 minutes later, the orbital defenses powered down, and the Zorth guards began laying down their weapons. Admiral Blake led the landing party personally, walking through the gates of the mine colony with a squad of human soldiers at her back. What she saw inside would stay with her for the rest of her life. The slaves were thin and sick and covered in dust from the mines. Some of them were humanoid, with 2 arms and 2 legs and faces that could almost be mistaken for human. Others were completely alien, with extra limbs or no limbs at all, with eyes in strange places or no eyes whatsoever. But they all had the same look of broken hopelessness, the look of beings who had given up on freedom long ago. A young female from a species Blake did not recognize approached her slowly. She was covered in soft brown fur, and her large eyes were wet with tears. "Are you real?" she asked in a voice barely above a whisper. "Are you really here to free us?" Blake knelt down to meet her eyes. "What is your name?" "Telia. I am Palani. My people were conquered 300 years ago. I was born here, in the mines. I have never seen the sky of my homeworld. You will, Telia. I promise you will." Over the next 3 weeks, the Human Coalition liberated 17 mining colonies across Zorth space. They freed 200,000 slaves from dozens of different species. Each colony told the same story of suffering and despair, of families torn apart and lives wasted in darkness. And each colony responded to liberation with the same mixture of joy and disbelief. On Varith Prime, the Galactic Assembly convened an emergency session. The crystal dome that had witnessed humanity's condemnation now echoed with fear and anger. "They are destroying everything," Ambassador Kelrick shouted. His scales were pale with stress, and his yellow eyes darted around the chamber. "The humans are not just fighting us. They are dismantling the entire slave system. They are freeing every resource species they find. If this continues, our economy will collapse within a decade." High Counselor Venn stood at the center of the chamber. Her glowing skin had dimmed since the failed invasion, and she looked older than she had a year ago. "What do you propose, Ambassador? Another fleet? The last one lost more than half its ships to a species that had never traveled beyond their own moon. How many ships are you willing to sacrifice this time?" "We must unite," Kelrick insisted. "All 47 civilizations must combine their forces. The humans are few in number. We can overwhelm them, can we?" Van asked. "Their population is 8 billion. They build ships faster than we thought possible. They adapt and innovate at a rate we cannot match. And they are angry, Kelrick. We voted to enslave them, and now they are showing us what that decision has cost." Ambassador Torin of the Palani Federation rose from his seat. Unlike the others, he did not look afraid. He looked thoughtful. "Perhaps it is time we considered a different approach," he said. "The humans are not conquering territory. They are freeing slaves. They are fighting against a system that many of us have always found troubling. Perhaps instead of opposing them, we should ask ourselves whether they might be right." The chamber erupted in angry shouts, but Torin continued calmly. "The resource species classification has brought us cheap labor for 8,000 years, but it has also brought us shame. We have built our civilization on the suffering of others. The humans have forced us to look at what we have become, and I do not like what I see." Kelrick pointed a clawed finger at Torin. "You speak of shame while your own species benefits from slave labor. Your trading ships carry goods mined by resource species. Your economy depends on the system you now criticize." "Then perhaps my economy needs to change," Torin replied. "Perhaps all our economies need to change. The humans are offering us a choice, whether they know it or not. We can fight them and probably lose, or we can join them and build something better. The debate continued for hours, but no resolution was reached. The Galactic Assembly was fracturing, some members wanting war, others wanting peace, and still others simply wanting to survive. For the first time in 8,000 years, the old order was beginning to crumble. And in the liberated colonies, former slaves looked up at the stars and whispered a word that had not been spoken in generations: hope. The space station had been built in just 3 months. Constructed at the exact midpoint between Earth and Varith Prime, it was a neutral zone, a place where enemies could meet and talk without weapons or threats. The human coalition had agreed to the meeting because they wanted peace. The Galactic Assembly had agreed because they had no other choice. Secretary of State Patricia Dunn led the human delegation. She was 61 years old, with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes that revealed nothing of what she was thinking. She had spent 30 years in diplomacy, negotiating with dictators and terrorists and corrupt politicians. But she had never negotiated with aliens before, and she was not entirely sure what to expect. The assembly delegation was led by High Counselor Ven, whose glowing skin had dimmed even further since the last session. With her came representatives from the 12 most powerful species in the galaxy, including Ambassador Kelrix of the Zoreth Dominion. His scales had turned almost white with stress, and his yellow eyes held a hatred that he did not bother to hide. They sat across from each other at a long table made of polished metal. Between them lay the fate of billions of lives. Ven spoke first. Secretary Dunn, I want to begin by expressing the Assembly's regret for the events of 2 years ago. The vote to classify humanity as a resource species was a mistake. We are prepared to offer your people full membership in the Galactic Assembly, with all the rights and privileges that entails. Patricia Dunn did not smile. No. The aliens exchanged confused looks. Kelrix leaned forward. You refuse membership? Do you understand what we are offering? Trade agreements, technology sharing, protection under galactic law. No species has ever been offered so much so quickly. We understand perfectly, Dunn replied. And we refuse. Your galactic law is the same law that allowed 39 civilizations to vote for the enslavement of 8 billion people. Your technology was built on the backs of slaves. Your trade agreements depend on the exploitation of species you consider beneath you. We want no part of your system. Ven's glow flickered with distress. Then, what do you want? The Assembly is prepared to negotiate in good faith. We can offer reparations, territorial concessions, formal apologies. Name your terms. Dunn placed her hands flat on the table. Our terms are simple. We want the complete abolition of the resource species classification. We want every slave in the galaxy freed, immediately and unconditionally. We want the entire economic system of the Galactic Assembly restructured to eliminate forced labor. And we want accountability for those who have profited from slavery for the past 8,000 years. The chamber fell silent. Kelrix made a sound that might have been laughter or might have been a sob. You are asking us to destroy our civilization, he said. No, Dunn replied. We are asking you to build a better one. The negotiations continued for 7 months. During that time, the Human Coalition continued its liberation campaign. Admiral Blake and her fleet freed slaves on 32 more worlds, dismantling the infrastructure of oppression one colony at a time. The former slaves were given a choice: return to their homeworlds if they still existed, or join the growing coalition of free species that had formed around humanity. Most chose to stay. Talia, the young Pelani woman Blake had met on Karath 7, became one of the most vocal advocates for the coalition. She traveled between liberated worlds, telling her story and inspiring others to believe that change was possible. Her words reached millions of beings who had spent their entire lives in chains. The humans did not come to conquer us, she told a crowd of former slaves on one of the freed worlds. They came to set us free. They asked nothing in return except that we help them build a galaxy where no one is property, where no one is a resource to be used and discarded. For 300 years, my people served the Zorth. For 300 years, we believed that slavery was our fate. The humans showed us that fate can be changed. Back at the negotiation station, the talks were reaching a critical point. Several species had already broken from the assembly and joined the human coalition. The Palani were the first, followed by the Varathi and the Korn. These were smaller civilizations, but their defection sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Ambassador Torn had left his position in the assembly to serve as the coalition's first non-human representative. He sat beside Secretary Dunn at the negotiation table, his brown fur neatly groomed and his large eyes bright with determination. "The assembly is crumbling," he told Dunn during a break in the talks. "Half the member species are looking for a way out. They know the old system cannot survive, and they want to be on the right side when it falls. And the other half? They want to fight." Kelrix and his allies are still pushing for a combined military response. They believe that if every species contributes ships, they can overwhelm your fleet through sheer numbers. Dunn nodded slowly. "And what do you think?" "I think they are fools. I watched your people defeat the Zorth with rocks and computer programs. I have seen what you have built in 2 years with stolen technology and human determination. If the assembly attacks you again, they will lose. But many people will die on both sides, and the hatred will last for generations. Then, we need to end this without another war." The breakthrough came on the 219th day of negotiations. High Counselor Ven arrived at the station looking exhausted, but somehow lighter than she had in months. She sat down across from Dunn and spoke without preamble. "The Assembly has voted," she said. "The resource species classification is abolished, effective immediately. All slaves currently held in Assembly territory will be released within 90 days. The economic restructuring will take longer, but we have committed to a timeline of 5 years. Dunn felt something loosen in her chest, but she kept her expression neutral. "And the accountability measures? A tribunal will be established to investigate the worst abuses. Those found guilty will face punishment under a new galactic law that we will draft together. The humans will have a permanent seat on this tribunal." What changed? Ven was silent for a moment. Admiral Blake's fleet entered the Zarth home system 3 days ago. She did not attack. She simply appeared. 100 human warships surrounding our most powerful member's homeworld. She sent a single message. "We can destroy you, but we would rather work with you. Choose." The Assembly chose. Secretary Dunn allowed herself a small smile. Admiral Blake always did have a way with words. The treaty was signed 1 week later. It was called the Covenant of Free Stars, and it established the framework for a new galactic order. The Human Coalition and the former Galactic Assembly would merge into a single organization, the Coalition of Free Species, with humanity as one of its founding members. But the work was far from over. 8,000 years of slavery had left deep scars, and healing would take generations. Former slaves needed homes and jobs and education. Former masters needed to learn new ways of thinking, and everyone needed to figure out how to build an economy that did not depend on exploitation. Patricia Dunn stood at the window of the negotiation station and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, billions of beings were waking up to their first day of freedom. Somewhere out there, a galaxy was being reborn. It was a good start. 10 years had passed since the vote that was supposed to enslave humanity. The galaxy had transformed beyond recognition, and the beings who had cast that vote now lived in a universe shaped by the species they had tried to conquer. Admiral Christine. Blake sat on the porch of her small house in Colorado and watched the sunset paint the mountains orange and gold. She had retired from active duty 3 years ago, after spending 7 years liberating slaves and building the Coalition fleet. Now she spent her days gardening and reading and playing with her grandchildren. Her grandson, a boy of 7 named Lucas, ran up to her with a tablet in his hands. The screen showed images from the anniversary celebrations happening across the galaxy. Former slave worlds held parades and festivals. Coalition ships performed aerial displays over planets that had once known only oppression. And everywhere, humans and aliens worked side by side, building something new. "Grandma, why did they try to hurt us?" Lucas asked, climbing onto her lap. Blake considered the question carefully. She had been asked it many times over the years by journalists and historians and fellow officers. But explaining it to a child was different. "Because they thought we were small," she said. "They looked at Earth and saw a young species with primitive technology. They thought we would be easy to control, easy to use. They did not understand what humans are capable of when we work together. But we beat them. We did more than beat them, Lucas. We showed them a better way to live. We showed them that you do not need slaves to build a civilization. We showed them that every being, no matter how small or strange, deserves to be free." Lucas thought about this for a moment. "Are we friends with them now?" "Some of them, yes. It took time, and some of them still do not trust us. But we keep trying. That is what humans do. We keep trying, even when it is hard, even when it seems impossible. We never give up." On Vareth Prime, in a chamber that had once housed the Galactic Assembly, a new organization held its annual session. The Coalition Council included representatives from 62 species, more than half of whom had once been classified as resources. They sat in seats that their grandparents could never have imagined occupying, making decisions about the future of galactic civilization. Secretary General Matthew Cole presided over the session. He was a former diplomat who had helped negotiate the Covenant of Free Stars, and he had served as the Coalition's leader for the past 5 years. At 63, he had gray at his temples and lines around his eyes, but his voice remained strong and clear. "The next item on our agenda concerns a membership application," he announced. "The Zorath Remnant has formally requested admission to the Coalition." Murmurs spread through the chamber. The Zorath had once been the most powerful species in the galaxy, the architects of the slave system that had operated for 8,000 years. After the Human Coalition's victory, their empire had been dismantled. Their military had been dissolved. Their government had been replaced by leaders committed to reform. Cole looked at the application on his screen. "They have met all the preliminary requirements. Their new government has implemented democratic reforms. They have paid reparations to the species they enslaved. They have prosecuted those responsible for the worst atrocities. The question before this council is whether we accept them as members." High Counselor Venn, who had traded her position in the old assembly for a seat in the new coalition, was the first to speak. 10 years ago, the Zorath voted to enslave humanity. They sent a fleet to conquer Earth. Justice would suggest that we refuse them, that we make them live forever with the consequences of their actions. She paused and looked around the chamber. But justice was served long ago, when humanity broke their power and freed their slaves. The question now is not what they deserve, but what serves peace. The Zorath are a broken people. They have lost everything they once had. We can leave them in exile forever, nursing their resentment until it becomes hatred. Or we can offer them a path forward, a chance to become something better than what they were. Telia of the Polani rose to speak. She had grown from the frightened young woman Blake had met in the mining colony into one of the Coalition's most respected voices. Her brown fur had grayed at the edges, but her eyes were as bright as ever. My people were enslaved by the Zoroth for 300 years. I was born in their minds. I never knew freedom until the humans came. If anyone has reason to hate the Zoroth, it is me." She looked directly at the Zoroth representative, a young female named Kara, who had been born after the fall of her species' empire. But hatred is a poison that destroys the one who carries it. I spent years angry at the Zoroth for what they did to my people. Then I realized that the Zoroth who enslaved us are gone. The ones who remain are their children and grandchildren, beings who had no part in the crimes of the past. To punish them for the sins of their ancestors would make us no better than the assembly was. The vote was held, and the Zoroth were admitted to the coalition by a margin of 47 to 15. It was, in its way, a mirror of the vote that had started everything. But this time, the decision was made by those who understood the value of second chances. That evening, Secretary General Cole addressed the galaxy from the same chamber where humanity's fate had once been decided by others. His words were broadcast to every inhabited world, heard by trillions of beings from hundreds of different species. 10 years ago, humanity stood alone. We were considered so insignificant that our enslavement was approved in a single afternoon. The greatest powers in the galaxy looked at us and saw only resources to be exploited. They sent their fleet to conquer us, confident that we would fall without a fight. He paused, letting the words sink in. They were wrong. Not because humanity was stronger than they thought, but because they underestimated what we could become when we had no other choice. We did not defeat the Zoroth fleet with superior technology. We defeated them with desperation and creativity and the absolute refusal to accept the fate they had chosen for us. But victory in war was only the beginning. The harder work came after, when we had to decide what to do with the power we had earned. We could have become conquerors ourselves. We could have built a human empire on the ashes of the old order, subjugating those who had tried to subjugate us. Some people wanted that. Some people said it was what the galaxy deserved. We chose differently. We chose to build a coalition based on freedom and equality. We chose to free the slaves instead of claiming them for ourselves. We chose to offer our former enemies a path to redemption instead of eternal punishment. We made these choices not because we are better than other species, but because we believe that every being deserves the chance to be free. Today, we welcome the Zoroth into our coalition. Today, we prove that the cycle of hatred can be broken. Today, we show the galaxy that humanity came not as conquerors, but as liberators. And we will continue to prove this every day, for as long as there are stars in the sky. The broadcast ended, and across the galaxy, beings of every shape and size looked up at the stars with new eyes. The humans had changed everything, not through conquest, but through conviction. They had shown that a better universe was possible, and they had built it, one freed slave at a time. On Earth, in a small house in Colorado, Admiral Christine Blake watched the speech with her grandson on her lap. Lucas was already falling asleep, tired from a long day of playing. She carried him to bed and tucked him in, then returned to the porch to watch the stars come out. Somewhere up there, among those distant lights, the galaxy she had helped save was continuing to grow and change. Former slaves were building new lives. Former masters were learning to see others as equals. And humanity, the species that was supposed to be enslaved, stood at the center of it all. They had voted to enslave Earth. Now every species that had cast that vote lived under the protection of human mercy, and the galaxy would never be the same. The story was far from over. There were still wrongs to right, still wounds to heal, still stars waiting to be explored. But for the first time in 8,000 years, the galaxy faced its future with hope instead of fear. And that was enough.